يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي.
In invading many countries,
right.
How would you then defend your country? Because you're not going to go to, if Trump sits down with Theresa May
I'm
or
talking
Macron.
about inhabitants of that land. So, for example, if there's
how do you defend Palestine or Syria?
Right, if you live in those countries and people come into those countries trying to attack you and take your sovereignty away as an independent, autonomous human being, you'd do the same thing as the Kenyans did when the British came to invade. You'd fight back. And it wouldn't be called terrorism, it would be called fighting for your land.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the issue?
So my thing is, because we know now that technology is so advanced from when the Quran was written, then it's not as simple as soldiers running into your country and you having a punch-up with spears and swords and things of that nature.
Saying, where does it say in the Quran you should blow yourself up? In fact, there's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. A hadith is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
And whoever kills themselves, just generally speaking, suicide, they will continually do that in the hellfire to themselves.
Okay, so why do these suicide bombers do that?
Where are they getting it from? They must be getting it from somewhere.
Some justification.
Yeah.
They get it from the Quran. How about that? They get it from the Quran. Let me tell you how.
Yeah,
they get it from the Quran.
please.
Because this might sound like it sounds like a contradiction, but let me make it clear. They get it from the Quran because of those salespeople, which I call salespeople, who have marketed the Quran in a way which two groups of people have bought into. One of them are the Islamic haters, and the other one are the terrorists. The Islamic haters and the terrorists have the same understanding of the Quran. Yeah, both of those have the understanding that actually those verses which are talking about war, and clearly in the context, as we've seen in Surah At-Tawbah chapter 9 verse 1 to 5, is talking about international relations, nations, treaties, etc. Those salespeople, which I call salespeople, they've been able to manipulate the text using hermeneutical gymnastics and exegesis.
Can you tell me what the text is in English?
So, there's so many verses. There are so many verses in
that says you can blow yourself up.
No, there's nothing in the Quran that says
you can blow
yourself up. No, I'm saying in the Quran there are verses that says you can fight the enemy.
Okay.
The enemy, who is the enemy? Now, basically what I'm saying to you is the Islamic haters and the terrorists have the same understanding of who the enemy is.
Okay.
Who is actually any civilian. Any civilian. Why are they the enemy? The way they justify it is as follows. They say they've got democracy, and people, the general populace, they actually endorse the leaders. This is the way many of the salespeople they actually pitch it. They say that they endorse their leaders. Therefore, they are responsible for what their leaders, from a foreign policy perspective, say and do. So if their leaders, like in 2003, say, let's go to Iraq and kill 123,000 people, then they are responsible. That's how they justify it. So now they're able to shift the blame from the politician and the military complex to the general populace. And therefore, general populace blood becomes as, as easy to get as, for example, the military or the politician's blood. So all of them become the enemy, so to speak.
We've got a few people that want to call in. You can call in because we have literally got half an hour left. 07951 497 878. You can call in. You can speak to Mohammed. He'll answer your questions. We've got one guy who's just like, you're so smart, outstanding. Tell him. He's going in. He thinks you're right.
So do you think that there should be a modern day writing of the Quran? Because like you said, that there's certain things that are taken out of context.
See, post-colonial mentality kicking in.
But you see, all the things that you said.
Let me ask you a question.
No, let me ask you about post-colonialism. Let me speak. There's people that I meet, that when I speak to them about capitalism, communism, left, right, colonialism, they don't have the Scooby. They don't know what that is. It's not taught in the schools properly unless you want to study it in university. So when you have young, let's say, not even young, but when you have certain people that may go into prison and there's a brotherhood in prison that's going to protect them, they start reading the Quran. They don't have the ingenuity or the education behind it to be able to contextualize things.
Okay, good.
Then that's why I'm saying, should there be some sort of concordance or explanation next to these verses to state that this is what it actually means? However, if you read another verse, it can look like it's contradictory because...
Okay, so you're talking about interpretation.
Well, like how sometimes the Bible has got the...
But this is a lot of Muslims arguing with the Bible that there's too many versions.
Right. So, no. Exegesis is when scholars of the Quran or the Bible or any religious text, they interpret it in accordance with language, the lens that they're meant to accord, what you call the hermeneutical approach.
The hermeneutical approach?
Yeah, it's called the hermeneutical approach.
Okay.
So they use different tools to access the religious text. That's done everywhere. That's done within Islam, Christianity, Judaism.
To understand text.
So individuals.
Can you say it once more?
It's called the hermeneutical approach.
And people that are studying the Quran for the first time should look at this when studying.
Absolutely, that's a good point. Exactly. So, in other words, when a young terrorist wannabe looks at the exegesis, and he realizes that the way he's interpreted the Quran is not in line with the classical interpretation from day one, from the first person to, according to my knowledge, to interpret the Quran in a full way is someone called Ibn Jarir al-Tabari in 310 AH. Then you have someone like Ibn Kathir, very famous tafsir or very famous exegesis that was written in 774 AH, and others like. For example, As-Suyuti who wrote it in 991. Anyways, or 911, which is actually funny because it's like 911. But that's when he died. And the point being is that the stuff is there. The scholars have done the work. All that needs to happen is that the young people that are persuaded, by the terroristic narrative, which is actually in many ways similar to the anti-Islamic narrative or the same, they should look at those things before making a judgment. And when they look at it properly, they will then see that actually what they've understood the Quran to be is different. It's disjointed from the way the classical scholars from day one have ever seen the Quran.
So how do you feel about this? Because we were just talking about it before, like this new trend of, it's cool to be Muslim. I know a lot of guys that they're Muslim, and then when it comes around to Ramadan, they're fasting, but they'll still be in the club, doing whatever. What do you think about this whole new wave of, it's cool to be a Muslim now?
Well, I think it is cool to be a Muslim. Let's be honest about it. Look, Islam is as follows. Let me just, for people that don't know and hearing me talk a lot of nonsense, like talk a lot of big words. I'm not trying to pontificate.
What do you do? Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry?
What do you do?
I'm a teacher.
Okay, what do you teach?
History.
Oh. Okay, makes sense.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so basically what I was going to say was that I was saying I don't want to pontificate in a sesquipedalian way, which means I don't want to try and just talk and use big words and people don't know what I'm talking about. Going back to basics, Islam generally just means submission to God. We believe that God created the universe, He maintained the universe, He's the sustainer of all things, and that He sent messengers of all time to respective peoples and localities, to respective civilizations, to tell them of the message of God, which is to worship God, to believe in Him, and to submit to His will. That He sent Abraham and Moses and Jesus and Prophet Mohammed at the end, and he's the final prophet. So that's foundationally what Islam is. And two things that Islam comes with is that message, which is a very basic premise. Believe in worship of one God, not three in one, not the Trinity. We disassociate ourselves from the Trinity. And not an atheistic, obviously, narrative. But here we're talking about just believing in one ultimate entity, creator, that has fashioned you, is sustaining you and maintaining you in this universe, this cosmos, where we are a significant aspect of that cosmos, and worship and submit to that all-knowing entity. That's basically the Islamic narrative. We believe we have evidences to prove that this narrative is true. So the two things come hand in hand, the message and the evidence base. And all of the prophets that have come to their respective peoples, they have come with two things. They've come with the message of Islam, which is to submit to the Creator, and they've also come with an evidence base, which is a range of rational evidences given to human beings to prove that the message is true. So Islam comes hand in hand, and some of those evidences are things like predictions of the future, things like the fact that the Quran, as you mentioned or alluded to before, is the only preserved ancient religious text. The things like the fact that you will not be able to find a contradiction in the Quran, the fact that the Quran is inimitable, in other words, it cannot be imitated, etc., etc. So from that perspective, we feel we have a rational, coherent worldview. We have a a coherent epistemology and a coherent ontology. We don't need a Western post-colonial narrative to tell us basically what modernity should look like or what modernity is.
It's easy for you to say, though, coming from the point of, like I said, an educated point, where there's many generations here that they are westernized. However you want to dress it up, that due to schooling, due to maybe the watering down of how...
And by the way, I'm not against everything in the West. I'm just saying what I don't like...
Yeah, how our thought process, you're saying, is coming from a very Western
you're
stance.
an African woman. Okay, well, whether you like it or not, you're an African woman.
Okay.
Your forefathers were Africans on the continent of Africa. Right? Your forefathers were Africans. White men came to your country and took over parts of your land. Yeah, that's what happened. Now you might think those days are done. Those days are not done. Those days are continual until this very day. There is a post-colonial reality. The way you dress, the way you talk, everything about you screams, I have been infiltrated and colonized once again, just like my forefathers were. The only difference is that your forefathers...
So shouldn't we teach our young people anti-colonialism?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Your forefathers were colonized by men on ground with boots, whereas you guys are colonized, I'm sorry to say it like this, but with ideas. Yeah, ideologically you're colonized. You can't think outside of this box of modernity, Western discourse. Where is the African tribalism you used to believe in?
Okay,
you know, Islam is the only religion in Africa which is actually the choice of the West African. And I'm going to say that quick. Islam is the only religion in Africa which is the choice of the West African. If you look at
but they used to, it wasn't religion with all of them. A lot of it was spiritualism, voodoo.
Yeah, I agree.
Practice.
But I'm saying that Islam, if you look at the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, if you look at the Ghana Empire, all of these empires were Muslim empires and was the choice of the African. If we want to talk about what was the choice of the West African, non-colonized person, we're talking about Islam. That's what we're talking about.
Going back to what you said though,
not Christianity. Christianity was forced by missionaries.
Seeing as you're speaking on those things, let's set aside Islam for 1 second.
Yeah.
How do you teach young people coming up how to think void of Western
I'm not saying that they should
ideas?
Western ideas are very valuable. I don't want anyone to say of like...
But every single thing that I say, you're saying is coming from a Western view. So my thing is, there's nothing wrong with that to a degree.
Yeah.
But it's important, if you're saying that our forefathers are African, that we should be able to switch and think.
I'm saying the truth is devoid of colour. Like, the truth is devoid of colour, creed. What I'm saying is this, is that when we are told that the truth is the truth because the white man said so, the post-enlightenment experience says so, the post-colonial experience says so, that's when we have to take a step back and say, why is that the case? Why don't we do like what our forefathers did? Because our forefathers dared ask the question, why? That's what they did. Why do you think Mandela is Mandela? Why do you think Malcolm is Malcolm? Why do you think Martin is Martin? These people are, these 3 M's are the way they are because they asked why. And then they said no. When they realize that the answer is not satisfactory. They asked why, and then when they're not convinced with the answer, then they said no. That's what made these people successful. That's what we have to do. But what I'm not saying is let's throw the baby with the bathwater. I'm not saying let's take away, all of the Western accomplishment, because let's be frank, Western technological progress is better than the majority of the world. Western scientific progress is better than... but it's been inherited by the Arab tradition, or by the Chinese tradition, or by the African tradition, and it's been built upon, but we need that, we can take it. That's a good thing. There are lots of things like in the world that we live in, the Western world we live in, anti-racism, kind of the inclusivity, tolerance. I like that stuff. I'm not saying let's throw that part away. What I'm saying is that the narrative, the meta-narrative that the Western man has forced us to engage with, that we should question.
We're still having people asking their call in. You are able to call in now. The number to call is 07951 497 878. I should know this for half an hour. 07951 497 878. Okay, got some good calls coming in.
We got a few texts. The Quran should not have a positive or negative influence or an impacted on you. It's based on a neutral. Simple terms on that from my own perspective. As humans, we just complicate things. If we all are one, why can't we all simply get along?
And to touch on that, what if I do like the teachings of the Quran, I want to start following it, however there's certain things in my life that I also like, and I don't think that me continuing to do those things will hinder me from going to heaven. What would you say about something like that?
Let me tell you something, okay? Let me
I'm scared.
It's like when sounds like when your dad's about to tell you, let me tell you something, she's coming.
Dad is coming, he's coming.
Let me tell you something.
Okay, yeah.
Don't get sucked in. I'm going to
Why?
Let me tell you what I'm going to say, yeah? Take this as advice, yeah, from me. I'm sorry, I'm not like a person of advice, but just take it as an advice, yeah?
Okay.
What I was going to say to you is, don't get sucked in by that which has not worked. What I mean by that is that this materialistic, consumeristic, American dream type ideology that the West has propounded and now is espousing to the rest and propagating to the rest of the world, this is actually causing depression for these individuals. If you look at WHO and Forbes, they've all done a joint study on the most depressed countries in the world, and all of them are Western countries, with the exception of Nigeria. I don't know why it's there, 0.9%. But yeah, anyways. But number one was the USA. The point being is that the spiritual void that these people have given you by making you think and making us think that actually the way to happiness, the pursuit of happiness, lies in materialistic pursuit and getting drunk on a Saturday or Friday.
What made you think that I was
I'm not saying
those things?
No, I'm saying that's just making us think. That's the American dream. So here, this culture of consumerism is what's leading to our demise. What is actually a more fruitful endeavor for human beings from a spiritual perspective? Even as Plato, Plato is an old school Greek philosopher from the Hellenistic period. Even him, but he came before Christ, 400 years before Christ. He would say, which is what I'm going to say to you now, focus on three things: your mind, your body, and your soul. The West will give you your mind. Yeah, they'll give you intellectuality to some extent. They'll give you body.
I think they'll hold it back.
They'll give you some of your mind. They'll give you some of your body, but they will give you no soul whatsoever. Trust me, they'll give you no soul
What
whatsoever.
is your definition of soul?
And when I say the West, I'm talking about the new Western narrative, new atheistic Western narrative of the Western
Then you don't need
European world.
spirituality.
And by the way, parts of the West are very religious, like the Bible. It's finding the truth, okay, the spiritual truth, which we believe, as I said before, the spiritual truth is believing and understanding that God exists and then having a relationship with God. What is the relationship? The most appropriate relationship you or I or anybody can have with God is one of submission, because He is, by virtue of reality and necessity, the most powerful and He's the most powerful, all-knowing, wise agent. Which the only thing you can do with such an entity in respect to Him is actually submit to Him, and that's Islam. Islam is submission to God, which is what Jesus said in John chapter 5 verse 30. He said, "I have not come to submit to my own will. I've come to submit to the will of the Father."
Okay, so like I said before, I feel that yes, there's many positive things in Islam, but when I speak to Muslim people that try to describe the religion to me, it's they come from a place of legalism. Everything is very legalistic. It's very,
No, I like that. No, that's a good point. You do make a good point.
Yeah, and
it's
that,
more about the letter of the law than the spirit of the law.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
if you want to look at the Bible, like the Sadducees and the Pharisees.
Okay.
And I think, to me, that's a big turn-off, because if I want to come to God as I am, I don't want to have to think about,
like what we were saying earlier about the praying 5 times a day. Why do you have to pray at a certain time?
You said because it's discipline, but at first, say for instance, does that mean then, if I don't pray 5 times a day, Monday, I might want to pray 22 times.
What time do you come to work?
And on Tuesday...
What time do you come to work?
Oh, I work for myself, so I come in whenever I want.
Okay, but you do come you do have slots from 5 to 6. You don't just say you don't tell your viewership or your listenership. You don't tell them I'm just going to be here from like whenever I want.
Oh no, this is not my job, but my actual job.
Yeah.
This is my side job. My actual job. Yeah. I work in the hours that make sense to that day.
But it's still organised, yeah. Everything. Listen to this. Everything important is organised.
I don't think your example was very good though.
No, hold on. Everything important.
You can finish.
Maybe you're right. I'll say that. Everything important and of value should be organised, compartmentalised, categorised.
But maybe my organisation is 3 for 1 week and 10 the following. Why does it have to be 5?
Let me tell you the difference. The difference is we believe there's an all-knowing creator. An all-knowing entity, the only relationship you can have with him is to submit to his knowledge ability. He knows 5 because 5 makes sense. How does it make sense? The all-knowing entity knows how. The all-knowing entity knows how. Just like when you go to the doctor, by the way...
I find every religion does that. When there's no real answer, it's just like, well, God knows and he understands.
Yeah, alright.
That's true. I can't explain it to you.
Yeah, no, that's true. But once again, that's an argument from ignorance. That's a fallacy. It's a logical fallacy. Just because we don't know the answer to something, it doesn't mean it's false.
I didn't say it was false, but I feel like
that's the line of argument.
It's an easy get out.
So
to say faith, God is when you don't have the answer.
So what happens?
Okay, yeah, you're right. So what? If I say it is an easy get out, just because something is easy, does it make it false?
No, but it doesn't make it true either.
Yeah, you're right. But it doesn't make it false. So it's actually a waste of argument and time.
Okay.
Can you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Go on, Z.
So what happens if I, like Lynn said, I'm a new Muslim and I don't pray 5 times a day, or am I looked down less upon?
Someone says prayer went down from 50 to 5 times a day. Is that true?
Well, no one had to pray 50 times. There was at the time of the Prophet when he was getting the revelation, there's a whole story and narrative of no one had to pray 50 times of. So
who decided that to go from 50? God. Oh, God let.
Yeah. So basically, what it is that we pray 5, but we get the reward of 50.
So yeah, well, as I
okay. So can I pray? Then it's going to go down to 2 and get in the reward of 5.
No, because God multiplies your reward. You see, from the Islamic perspective. Yeah. So you do little things.
But is that only if I pray 5 times a day? If I say I'm going to do it 3 times, then what happens? That's what I'm like.
Let me tell you something, okay? Seriously, from an Islamic perspective, the most important thing is belief. That's the most important.
So even if I pray once a day, but I believe, that's enough.
That is enough to make you a Muslim.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is enough to make you a Muslim. However, some scholars say that you have to pray 5 times, that's the minimum.
Okay.
So the prayer is a really important thing for Muslims. It's a very, very important thing.
So what will happen 1 week, I just don't do it?
What will happen is that you'll be sinning in Islam.
Oh, is that sin?
It's a sin, yeah.
Oh, so you have. If you don't do it 5 times,
so is there any point? Is there any point calling yourself? Because we both know a lot of people that are Muslim and they don't pray 5 times a day. So does that mean every day that they don't pray 5 times a day they're sinning?
Yes.
Listeners, you Muslims that's not doing 5 times a day is a sin.
Let me tell you something ridiculous. Like from once again from a non-Muslim perspective, this might sound ridiculous, yeah. But not praying 5 times a day is one of the worst sins, to the extent by which, if someone doesn't do it, it's like worse than many of the other sins, let's just say.
So that's at the top of the list.
It's at the top of the list.
And is it the same repetitive?
So then is that why a lot of, you might pray 5 times a day, but then they're still out here like doing whatever?
Basically, prayer is the embodiment of Islam. Islam is submission to God. Prayer, if you look at if you look at the structure of prayer, we stand, we kneel, we prostrate. That is the embodiment of what it is.
Do you think it still has meaning though? It's like, for example, if I say to my husband every night at 9 p.m, I love you.
Nice.
That's a sweet touch.
Yeah, just whatever. Say if I do that, 9 p.m, he's going to get a text from me or a call, I love you, okay? Now I feel that the repetition is going to eradicate the true feeling of me saying that, because all it is repetition.
But I said it shows.
I don't believe you believe that.
I said that.
If your husband stopped saying I love you to you, you'd say, why didn't you say I love you?
No, if he did it at a scheduled time, I'm going to be like...
Oh, you talk about the timing. By the way, the timing is very, it changes.
No, just the amount then. If he did it, I would much rather my husband tell me like, he's thinking about me and...
Yeah, but the one day when if he does...
Do you know what? The thing is, in Christianity, many people argue about the Trinity, and it is quite confusing. It really is.
It's not just confusing, it's actually logically contradictory. It's like saying having a tall, short man. You can have things which... Yeah, tall, short...
could hate that.
If you say there are 3 things which are gods, the Father is God, the Son is God, and the Holy Spirit is God, and then when you're asked how many gods are there, you say 1. That means one of 2 things. Either you can't do basic mathematics or you're lying. That's the 2 things it could mean. You either can't do basic mathematics or you're lying. That's the 2 things.
But I think with Christianity, when they say the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, it's kind of like
the Spirit is the intercessor, then the Son, and then obviously...
All 3 are gods.
Yeah,
that's what all the creeds say. That's what Catholics believe in.
I think the way they...
Seventh-day Adventists don't believe that.
Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in that.
Yeah. Okay, but listen, we're running out of time, so just to wrap up, my last question would be, do you feel that Muslims are being persecuted at the moment, but on the basis of Islamophobia, even people are managing to link Islam to everything negative. Something can happen. Is it a terrorist attack? Is it Muslim? And all of that. How do you think that that rhetoric can be not wiped away, but how can Islam be portrayed in a more positive light?
I think the thing is, so long as the West has this agenda of what is referred to as manifest destiny,
Why do you think the West has this agenda specifically against Islam?
Well, no, it's not specifically against Islam.
What is it against?
It's against the whole world. When America was formulated, when they wiped away, the same way that ISIS is wiping away people, the US wiped away people on a much larger scale
100%.
of Native Americans.
100%.
Just like the whites wiped away a lot of the blacks. Okay, so this stuff happened. They're not religious.
It's not new to them.
It's not. They actually sometimes use the Bible to justify their actions. So having said that, in the same way that happened, and the Crusades happened, all these things, but in the same way that the Americans did that, and they have this thing called manifest destiny. If you can research it on YouTube or Google or something, manifest destiny. This thing is westward expansion. America's stated aim is to expand as much as it can, imperialistically, using whatever means necessary, until it basically encapsulates the whole world with this ideology, or even this economic prowess.
Okay. So they want to make the West bigger, basically.
They want to have as much control with... Look, this is it. The American complex, the hegemonic American power, wants to control as much of the world as possible, whilst fooling the layman into thinking they're in control of something which they're not in control of, by giving them concepts of equality, democracy, which actually mean which don't mean much actually. You have a choice between two different political parties. You can't actually go above those two things and first past the post. You have inequalities to the highest degree from an economic perspective, and even from a racial perspective. Look what's going on in America with black people. So these things, and you've had slavery at the same time as you had the American dream. You had the American complex, and you had the Constitution of America written. You had slavery at the same time. So all of this is all contradictory to me. I just see a Western power trying its best to get as much control of the rest of the world as possible.
And
now Islam, before it was the Russians, before it was the Soviets, before that, America really wasn't around, but it was the other, the real Americans, which are the Europeans, because obviously America is the extension of the European hemisphere, or the West from that perspective. They were the ones who were colonizing, and now it's America that's doing it.
Okay, so before we wrap up, do you want to tell the listeners where they can find you? And just a quick question, with your videos on YouTube, have you ever come into contact with anyone that has tried to say that it's hate speech?
No one has ever. That's one thing that's just good. No one has ever tried to go down that line with me, because it's unequivocal with me. Like, I've got videos that are very clear against terrorism, and actually showing and unpacking from an Islamic perspective how terrorism, or the narrative that is trying to be sold here, is actually a false narrative. So no one's ever accused me of being a hate preacher. No one's ever accused me of being a terrorist, empathizer or sympathizer or anything like that. So I've never had that issue for me, because if they do that, I think it would be an insult to the Muslim community, first and foremost, before it's even an insult to me. That would mean to say that anyone who's speaking intellectually on behalf of Islam should be smeared with whatever it is, or with that. So it would be so obvious that if they did it, they would have the boomerang hit them back.
And what do you think about people like Amjad Chowdhury and...
Anjem Chowdhury?
Yeah.
Well, people like that are people who have had an amplified voice in the media because of their radical views. And they have radical...
Do you agree with any of his...
No, the only thing I agree with him is the basic premise of Quran and Sunnah Islam. Basically, he's a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. That's the only thing Yeah, and maybe he likes curry because he's an Indian guy or whatever he is. I like curry as well. I can agree with him on these things. So I don't want to essentialize, but apart from that, obviously, if you're talking about terrorism, then obviously not.
Someone said, if we lived in the perfect world, I'd make you a scholar. Have you ever wanted to be a scholar?
I've never ever thought about being a scholar of any discipline, particularly. I just like being an educator,
Yeah. So where can we find you?
I'm on YouTube. My name is Mohammed Hijab. Hijab like a female, the scarf.
Is that your actual surname?
Yeah, it's hijab. Some people call me hijab, but it's basically the same thing.
Okay. And how are you spelling Mohammed? Because there's different ways.
Mohammed. and then hijab, H-I-J.
Do you use Twitter, Instagram?
Twitter, no, I'm not really good. Instagram, I've tried to become more active with it, but it's mostly YouTube. It's mostly YouTube, yeah.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I'm sure we're gonna have to have a part 2 at some stage because we haven't come
Someone's already requested. They said they need a part 2 already, so you have to come back now.
Oh, we have to. Okay, then let's move forward.
يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي